Hey everybody, I am here with Pat from Sega Saturn Shiro to talk vinyl. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. I'm so pumped for this podcast because I know Bob and I have been talking about vinyl for a long time. Well, I guess a long time, relatively speaking, of course. But
Yeah,
anyways, we've been talking about vinyl for a long time. I know Bob is into it. I'm very, 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 very into it. So I think we're all very vinyl esque in ways, and I'm really excited to talk about records there.
awesome. So, I have kind of had a new appreciation for vinyl for a bunch of reasons, mostly because I finally have equipment that I could hear the differences and stuff. But
You
because I
finally
know
got
Pat is,
equipment.
yeah, we'll get into the equipment in a bit. But because I know Pat's so into this, I'm going to be playing more devil's advocate in this one.
Okay.
And I do truly believe that there is a giant bunch of bullshit revolving around the whole vinyl scene. And for me, I see three main people that are into collecting vinyl now, not people that have for their whole lives. I mean, people that are getting back into it. One is the aging hipster with jeans so tight they probably can't hear anyway that buy a $40 Bluetooth vinyl player and tell
I wear
everybody how
tight
much
jeans, but
better
don't
it
tell anybody,
sounds.
Bob.
Yeah, and it's that's those are the people that frustrate me. Then there's of course the people who appreciate the entire experience, the artwork. They like having a physical copy of something. You know, they enjoy the music, but it's really the choice of having something physical and cool to look at, which I have all the respect in the world for. But then there's the people like me who have been doing music forever, have been into any kind of music recording and of course nerdiness forever, and have just discovered the actual differences and the major benefits sometimes of vinyl, not all the time. So what's your kind of 10-foot view opinion, kind of in the same vein? And of course we're going to get into details in a bit.
In terms of the whole quality thing and the opinion, the ongoing opinion on vinyl, or just
Yeah,
my
just like kind of I
perspective
had
on.
like my whole like it's a lot of the vinyl resurgence is mostly bullshit, but when done right, it's absolutely amazing. Would you
Well, the
agree with
thing
that?
is,
Disagree?
the one thing is that the biggest draw for the vinyl is the idea of the analog recording. So, for those that don't know, probably don't know. So back then and back in the day, they used analog equipment. So tape, like reel to reel tapes, master tapes, in that recording, and they would make masters off of that. So they would take that analog master, dub it, cut it to a master, a lacquer and stuff, and cut vinyl from that. And that's sort of what a lot of people miss is that analog sound, a lot of stuff that was the go to, and there's that warmness of it, and a lot of people like will kill for like people like me will pay I don't know $600 to get something like that sometimes, but a lot of cases that's more the outside thing, and that's what people like. Nowadays, a lot of the stuff is recorded directly from digital, which sometimes can sound really, really good, but sometimes could sound really, really bad, depending on how it's mastered and how it's cut. But a lot of people are here for the analog sound, like a lot of people. I just one of the big proponents is like stuff like Mike from I forgot what his last name is, from the Ingroove Record in Phoenix. He has a whole YouTube channel, talks all about that analog sound and stuff, and actually cut his own record from direct analog. I think I have a copy here. Let me find it, but it's sure the movie's closer, or it's in the other pop. But essentially, people want that analog sound, that analog signal, and that's what a lot of people miss. And I think some people are in it for, like, they like the hipster stuff of it. They have a crappy record player that they grind it to a, I guess, a flat, basically a flat surface, like a tire, but um, essentially, it's just a lot of people want that. There's different levels of it too. There's people that just want, like, something cool to hang on their wall or something, or like they wanna uh, they want to get down with the plastic love or something like that. Just all difference and stuff. So, like, for me, really, I like records just because it's a, I don't know. It's been all there in my life, and I guess I'm just a hardcore music fan, like probably Bob is, where it's like I love the music. It's all about the music. Like, I mean, I'm so pure about it. I'm so insane. Like, I mean, I paid, like, it's that Bill Evans record there that I have. Like, this is like this was like, it's by a record company called ERC, which is an electric recording company. This is a $600 record, and that's not like worth $600. I paid $600 for this record. I'm not crazy. And essentially, they have the biggest analog process. They cut it all, like, from tube amps and stuff. It's insane, the quality they try to aim for, and that's sort of that thing that I want with the records. I want that analog signal. I want that, like, even with tapes. That's why I'm getting the tapes now, because I want that analog to go. So I'm starting to record and dub my records to cassettes so I can listen to a pure analog experience. And that's sort of what I want to be. I guess, was it Joe Walsh's, I want to be an analog man in a digital world. And that's sort of what I aim for.
So I've been doing a ton of research into this, as well as testing and listening, and the one thing that I've consistently found over and over again, with some exceptions, there's always some exceptions, but generally, whatever format the band, artists, engineers were listening to during the mixing and mastering process has sounded consistently better for me.
Mm.
And the one that really stood out, that I've been showing everybody that comes over, from people who don't care about music to people who absolutely love music, is that Michael Jackson's Thriller. I play Billie
Great
Jean, the
album.
newly remastered versions that are up on iTunes, the mastered for iTunes. I play it through the same exact amp. I play it through as close to the same settings as you could possibly play it. And everybody goes, "That sounds amazing. You have an awesome stereo." I go, "Wait a minute." And then I put on the vinyl, which is an original pressing. Original meaning maybe, I don't know when it was made, but definitely in the early 80s. So not a modern reprint.
So,
And I
yeah,
put that on.
whatever that print run was back in the '83 or whatever when that album dropped.
Yeah, I mean, they sold millions of copies, so it could have been made over the course of a few years. But the important point is it's not a modern reprint, it's the original. And every single person hears the difference. And not only do they hear the difference, most people call out what they hear, which is shocking to me, because I would be willing to bet if I did a MP3 versus mastered for iTunes comparison, no one would be able to pick out the differences so strikingly different. And it's the same with cassette. One of the albums I grew up listening to was Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2 from Halloween. And I got a very nice
Great
cassette
band,
player
great
now.
band.
I bought a sealed, new, old stock cassette. So from the late 80s, early 90s. I listened to the whole album and I just went, "This is amazing. It sounds so different." And then I found the original CD I had since I was a kid. And I
Mhm.
listened to the opening, the verse, the chorus, and the hair on my arm stood up. It was totally different. So for me personally, I don't really care about analog versus digital, and the fact that it's on vinyl or cassette means nothing. It's all which is the better sound overall. And better, of course, is subjective, but one of the things too that I've been finding is some of the remastered editions of things don't sound the same. And maybe that's because the artist wanted it one way at the beginning, and their ears and taste changed later. But if you're chasing the original experience, that's where I like hunting these things down. Now, of course, the couple giant caveats to that: if the record's damaged or if the cassette's worn out, it's not going to sound better.
Yeah.
I got a Janet Jackson cassette for basically free, and I think it had been played a million times because it sounded awful. And that's kind of just one of the things that you're going to have to deal with. But
Yeah, it's
I've been
definitely
pretty
part of it.
fascinated with that.
Yeah, but yeah, to use an example of that, like with there's a good point you brought up with that remastered. One of the biggest proponents I have for that, and one of the reasons why this band is such high classic records, is Megadeth. So
Hmm.
you probably know that Dave Mustaine went through about 2004 and did the remaster of all CDs and did remasters of all that, right?
Yes, and listening digitally, some of them came out awesome. He destroyed Euthanasia. Love that album. That the new
Yeah,
mix
for
sounds
some reason,
terrible.
I don't know why he, like, the thing I hate most about is the drums. He added the worst. Like, I don't know if he might have reverbed it weird or something, or maybe he just added digital drums to it. But like, it sounded just awful compared to the original drum sound. It's like
Mm.
it feels hollow and like it's, I don't know. It's like spinning in the face of Nick Menza almost. It's almost on
Yeah,
that level of disrespect, and it just so
but
yeah.
if you take the flip side, you take Rust in Peace. The reason I play guitar is that album. That you just
Yeah.
held up the vinyl version of it. If you're listening on a cell phone with, some Bluetooth headset in, I think the remastered definitely sounds better. But I'd be willing to bet if you put it through a good stereo and good speakers versus the original cassette from back then in mint condition, I bet you the cassette would sound better.
Yeah. I honestly, for Rust in Peace, the remaster, I have a lot of issues with that. That's not related to the mastering of that. Just a lot of different choices and things Dave did. But like I said, I imagine like yeah, if you put like a crappy cassette next to that, I definitely think their master would sound better. But if you, on the flip side, if you get an original record of that or like a rip of that, which is online, it would blow away the remaster 100 times. But then it gets down to opinion because I know a lot of songs are different. Like Take No Prisoners is like complete, like the vocal take is
Right.
completely different. It's not even close to the same. I think Dave actually re-recorded that too, which is kind of
He re-recorded the vocals and the backgrounds because they lost the
yeah.
original masters of them.
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of sus on that because in Rock Band they actually used the originals, and it was that original take. So I'm kind of a bit sus on what Dave is saying with that. So because
Yeah, I
yeah,
think I want to stick to the
yeah, we'll
just
stick to
the
that.
formats
I just get so
itself.
passionate with the Rest in Peace.
Me too,
So
because I
yeah,
could talk for an entire podcast just about different recording methods of my favorite bands. But
yeah,
so you mentioned ripping vinyl. Let's save that for the end. But one of
yeah.
the
No
things
worries.
that I wanted to talk about is reprints of vinyl. And
Hmm.
I have a couple of examples that are really fascinating. I have AC/DC Back in Black. I bought it last year, because I was just excited to be able to live in a place where I could have stuff like this. And I opened it yesterday for the first time. It's twice as thick as every other record I own. And it was it came scratched from the factory. Not bad, but a little bit. And it sounded terrible. It sounded like
Yep,
somebody took an MP3 and put it and copied it to vinyl type of thing.
that's pretty
It
much
did
what
not
they've been
sound
doing for
good.
some of these releases.
Yeah, total cash grab, capital. I mean, this is what you find in Target most of the time. That the vinyl resurgence. That's the hipster listening on Bluetooth headset type of analogy right there. It was so disappointing. And I listened to Master of Puppets Remastered, the one that was released a few years ago. That was very good. It sounded
Yeah,
a
they
little
did a
bit
really good
too
job on that
clean.
one. I'm
Yeah,
surprised how much all the blackened stuff has been really good for the vinyl,
yeah.
Especially Ride and Master Puppets specifically. Those two are really good, but they're probably a little bit harder to find because of a certain Stranger Things series. I'm just joking,
Yeah.
but yeah,
St- Still think that was that scene. I didn't like this season at all, but that scene was worth watching the whole thing for.
Eddie Munson is he was the goat of that season. Him and Argyle, the best.
Yeah. But
Perfect
then I
quote.
also got the Black Album, Metallica, which very good as well. It's
Mhm.
just a little, almost a little too good, if you will. But that's when it starts to get to an interesting discussion of Bob Rock had absolutely every recording technique that was from old school to whatever was cutting edge just came out that year making that album. So I'm really wondering what is the best way to listen to the Black Album? Is it cassette? Is it CD? Is it this vinyl version that's a happy medium of everything? So that one I don't really think we should throw in the mix here because that's going to start to get complicated. I would also be willing to
It's
bet some
interesting
of
though
the
to think
Pantera
about.
stuff too, because that drum tech was, I mean, they redefined how drums are recorded. So were they all listening to burned CDs in their big fancy studios in the mid to late '90s, or were they really listening on analog? I mean, those
Yeah,
are
it's an
gray
interesting
area.
era for sure because it was between when digital and analog sort of that transition happened because it was when they're moving away from vinyl, and that's why a lot of the vinyl stuff back then is pretty pricey. But it's still the analog stuff was the better equipment at the time and the best. They have the best practice because that's what they were good at. So then you had that aspect of it as well. So you don't. It's kind of a weird thing, but if I had to hazard a guess, I'm pretty sure they probably would be listening back in the studio at least on reel to reels, and I can almost
Yeah,
guarantee most of that stuff that was recorded was on to analog reel to reels. Unless there's some weird exceptions like Dire
yeah.
Straits where I forgot what album the name was. The one with Money for Nothing is on.
Hmm.
Brothers in Arms. That was all digital, and that's a whole digital album, and that's still probably one of my favorite sounding albums on vinyl. So it's an interesting discussion
Well,
to have.
don't forget though that when you're listening to high end reel to reel, there's little to no tape noise. When you're talking about the analog warmth, you're talking about what happens after. And the reel to reel is different because when I was recording our album, the producer insisted upon using a fake tape noise plugin that just put out a high pitched sound that I guess if you're over 50 you can't hear it, but everybody else could, and that was a big argument. But it does
That's
add
kind of weird.
something. But yeah, it's a long story that pissed me off a lot. But
Honestly, he should have
lost
went
a
all
lot
out
of
and made
money
you
from
guys
that.
record reel to reel. That's at least my opinion.
But it's not just the reel to reel. It's then when it was going to mastering, that reel to reel was going through an analog mastering board out to another piece of analog, which is then copied to another. So that's where you start to really get a lot of the differences, not just one thing of analog. Um, so it's kind of interesting to think about all of this stuff and how it applies to how you want to listen to your music. Because I'll tell you, yesterday when I was going through a couple of these records, I was loving the music. I was kind of working in the background. I put my regime for when I ever listen to any new record new to me is I have a project cleaner that a friend of mine got me as a housewarming present. Thing's
Oh,
amazing.
nice.
It's one of
You
those
must have a really
gifts
good
that like
friend.
I would have yeah, I'm very lucky, but I would have never paid for that myself. But now that I have it, I get it because you basically put a little bit of the special fluid on it. You have a brush,
Oh,
it
geez.
spins around like it's a thing, and then you press a button, and there's a vacuum built in that sucks out all the fluid that you put on. And when you empty out that fluid, it's gross. Like you really see what you're cleaning off of that. So I take that and then I put it onto the. I have like the special sleeves that you buy, and then I play it on the Fluence record player that I have. And then when it's done, you put it back in the sleeve, and then you pretty much never have to clean it again. I don't clean it every time I listen, just the first time it's new to me. And I'm going through, ACDC Back in Black, very dirty right from the factory. Master of Puppets is great. And then I threw on. I actually don't really like. I hope I don't piss anybody off, but the Crosby, Stills, and Nash never really got into. But my dad used to play the album, and one song, Dark Star, I always loved. I have no idea why. I like it. And I guess I'd bought that album over the past year, cleaned it, I put it on, and the whole time I was listening to the other albums, I'm like, what a great experience. This is cool, but maybe I'm just getting used to the speakers. Whenever you have something awesome, fast car, good speakers, like it's not as exciting as day one. I threw on that original album from the 70s, dropped the needle down, and I get chills again. It was that, holy crap, this is amazing. I hear every instrument. You hear the pops and hiss of the record, but the clarity, like this is definitely how they were listening, and when they were
Yeah.
trying to get this record sounding right. So there is definitely a difference.
No, definitely for sure. I definitely think it's probably the closest you can get to listening to a reel to reel next to buying a couple $100 lacquer to listen to as well. And then reel to reels, that's a whole different beast. We'll have to do another podcast on. That's pretty much like it's like the Neo Geo for people that are more game oriented of collecting. Like reel
Yeah,
to
I want
reels is
you and
it's
Miss Mad
crazy.
Lemon to do that podcast, and I'll just sit in the middle and just kind of keep it on track. I think you
Oh
two
no
would
no
be
no!
awesome at
I
doing
would
that.
never do reel to reel. That's too crazy for me, and I'm insane. Like I'm buying like cassettes and stuff and listening to stuff like that. I don't need to get that crazy. I think I can live with a vinyl. I think that might be my stopgap until I hit the lottery. Because man, some of that stuff on reel to reel is just insanely crazily pricey.
Yeah. So back to the point I made at the beginning, which once again I'm going a little bit hard just so we have two
Go
sides of
for it.
this,
Go as
but
hard as you need to, Bob.
but the original point is this whole I've seen all these clickbait crap popping up. The resurgence of cassettes as vinyl, the new
Hold
CD,
on.
and
Let
it's
me get a. I'll get a thumbnail for you so you can make clickbait.
uh, that's funny as hell. I might have to use that, but it's
It's like
mostly
$100
bullshit.
record. Why does it sound like crap?
Yeah, mostly bullshit. Mostly, it's all about the creation of the music, the quality of the physical thing that you're holding on to, like the Janet Jackson cassette that was worn through, basically. That's just because it's on cassette and just because it's on vinyl is not going to make it better,
Exactly.
but it could
A
be.
record on analog does not make a good sound make. Not a good sound make sometimes.
Yeah. Now, for the video game side of things, I had seen the data discs releases, and this is going to be all compliments coming up, so just strap in. And I immediately thought, like, is this another cash grab bullshit? Is this another thing where they're just printing a video game cover of somebody's favorite video game, knowing they're going to buy it anyway? And I didn't really get it, and I also didn't know who they were after I had asked that question politely on the podcast, and people immediately jumped in politely, like, "No, they're legit. You have to look into these people. They're awesome." So I did. I bought a couple of their records, and Space Harrier showed up, and as soon as the music started playing, I just went, I get it. I get it now, 100%. Because it is not like listening to the digital versions, like just the full digital rips. It is not. It is absolutely different. And in fact, I mean, maybe this is blasphemous here, but I think that it sounds better than the any of the other versions I've heard, whether it was digital on Saturn or the cartridge on Genesis or something like that, because it was the full soundtrack, but no heavy analog hum from a console. Because remember, these things were not audiophile grade consoles. They all of the components inside of these consoles were 5 to 10% tolerant resistors, 20% tolerant capacitors. It would have been useless in the late 80s, early 90s to put out a super high end thing because no one would have really heard the difference, and the company would have lost millions of dollars. So I'm not shitting on Sega for that, but
I
wow,
am.
what an
Get
experience when I
get
listened to
get a
that
triple
soundtrack.
bypass, boys.
Even with the triple bypass, you're never going to get rid of that.
Hmm.
You're going to lower the noise floor, but it's still going to be there. Whereas on the record, your noise floor is the hiss of the needle, if that. But you still have the analog warmth from it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I don't know 100. I'm not familiar with how Data Disc does their mastering and how they get the recording, so I can't speak to that. The one example I do know is the company Ship to Shore. They have a. I'll get over here. They had a snatcher. Let me get it quick.
I believe we covered Ship to Shore on RetroRGB a couple times too for a few of the things that they had been releasing. Crystal's
Yeah.
been
So
covering a lot
yeah,
of that.
yeah, they did this one Snatcher, which is probably
Okay.
my favorite soundtrack of all time. And the way they described it when they're doing, and which I think it's another fantastic sounding record. They're really good data discs, but essentially they told me that they got a rip directly from a Mega. Was it the Mega Drive with the HD graphics from a Sega CD for the stuff that they didn't have on the Konami the Zoom tracks from Snatcher, which I thought was interesting. And they did that whole capture, and it was interesting how they did that. And I'd like to think that Datus did something at least similar to that on probably maybe arcades, or I don't actually even know. Maybe they even got some master stuff from Sega. So
I'd be interested to see as well, because as somebody who has spent an unhealthy amount of time testing Sega Genesis audio or Sega audio, I could tell you that it's not easy to get a recording that sounds perfect out of it. You're going to get you need you need the right equipment, but you also need to know what to do with the files after you've captured them.
yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's sort of one of the things that I would like to see at least more with these companies is like the transparency of the recording process. I just full disclosure, I talked to somebody from Ship to Shore and asked them about it a little bit. So I would love to like get some more transparency in that regards because a lot of stuff, especially I try not to knock it. Like some of the limited run stuff sounds kind of and it's kind of dubious where they might have gotten their record because there's no like info on. I don't even know the record company that stuff like limited run games used the pressing plant. So it's kind of
Yeah,
a something
so
that I think,
limited run games
yeah,
is going to be the target example, right? Because I always first defend them. Limited run games is
mhm.
not your personal connoisseur for your collection. They are not the savior of physical media. They are a company that has to make money to pay their employees so their employees could pay their rent and eat. They're
Yeah,
not,
no, that's understandable.
yeah, they're not a not-for-profit company. So when they're running these special edition things, it's nice to see when they put the time and care into them, but you're getting a Walmart record, you're getting a Target record, you're getting tchotchkes, you're getting the stuff that they know sell to their customer base. You're not getting the stuff that they know is the best that they could do because that's
Yeah,
not their business model. And I'm not shitting on them for that. I'm defending them 100% because I don't think they're the ones saying our stuff is the best of all time. I think some of their weird fanboys are. So
Yeah,
that's
and
I
I'm fine
certainly
with
don't like
that.
it, but
Like I said, I think it just all comes down to the disclosure part of it, just being like, hey, this is how it was mastered. This is who did it. Like, this is, where it was printed at, where it was pressed at. I think the little disclosure would be kind of cool to have with at least a lot of these records. And I know a lot of, like, because a lot of the audiophile stuff have that, like, pressed at Palace, pressed at GZ, pressed here and there, and they have all the mastering stuff, mastered from the original annotatapes by Bernie Grunman. And it'd be kind of cool to have that disclosure within the video game vinyl community, because I've talked to a lot of people in and out of the audiophile community and the viewing community, and they kind of agree that there should be some more, at least a little bit more disclosure in the nicest way possible. And I'm not saying, like, it's not me saying, oh, all LRG stuff is bad or garbage or this all everything
yeah.
else is good. It's just like something that especially nowadays. I don't know if you heard about the controversy with I don't know if you know Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab.
Hmm.
Basically, they do a bunch of audiophile records, and there's one right there that they did in the past for Adam Hartmother. But essentially, there's a controversy going around because apparently they didn't. Apparently, there's digital steps within their analog process when it's supposed to be full analog, and
Hmm.
there's rumors that for the last 7 or so years they're releasing stuff that had a digital process to it when everything's supposed to be all analog, all from the master tapes. And it really is because of actually kind of going back to Thriller. They did something called a one step, which is it's basically when they get rid of the mother and the father stuff. And they print directly from that from the lacquer, which is the highest they could quality they possibly could get. And apparently they were running because apparently they pressed about 30K of it, and if they pressed it throughout, and if they cut it directly from the master tape, that would mean theoretically they ran the master tape for Thriller about I don't know, so many times, because they have to keep cutting it, because after a certain amount of time the lacquer wears down, so they'd have
Hmm.
to run it probably. I think they did 1K for each of it, so they'd have to run the master tape about 30 times, which is pretty unhealthy for a record of that age and vintage. Or sorry, master tape of that age and vintage. So they were theoretically saying that they would have not let them run it that many times. So, and there's a lot of controversy with that.
So there, you
So
just brought up two excellent points, and I know we're
yeah,
nerding out and getting a little pedantic, but that's kind of the point of this podcast. First and foremost, if you're skipping the mother and father recordings before it goes, before it goes to vinyl, you're skipping the process that an engineer with a trained ear would have planned for. So that's one of the things that when I was looking into mastering and talking to some old school people, and we didn't end up mastering ours, long story, totally other podcast, not this, but one of the things that I was learning was that they know, they hear what they're hearing today, right now, when they're doing it, because they know what that's going to turn into when it comes down the assembly line, because they've done it so many times for so many years. So you might argue that skipping those extra processes would change the sound from what the original engineer had planned on. And on the other side, you're 100% right in that the more that they're cutting into that, that changes the sound and eventually ruins the original. So even if theoretically you had the same factory and the same quality materials and everything, the record that you would buy today is not going to sound the same as the record you'd buy in 83, 84.
yeah, but that one step actually produces. It's supposed to be that way. It's a high quality process to press vinyl. So I don't know if it would affect that in that regards. It's just it's to make it higher quality, because you're skipping that loss of generation from going mother to father.
Yeah, that's one that I would have to listen to, and that's one that's probably up for debate, because while it
Yeah,
might technically be better, just like CD is technically better, if that's not what they were planning for in the mix, it could definitely change the sound.
yeah. Honestly, I've listened to a lot of one steps, and they blow the originals almost away. Like, we'll have to meet up sometime, and we'll go to New York. I'll bring a couple one steps with me, and you'll be like, "Oh my god, this is probably the best I've ever heard this record." Like Thriller they pressed, so I'll have to maybe pick that up, and I'll bring that down, and you'll be like, "Oh my god."
So what's the difference? Can you describe the difference? Is it basically just as, is it the same sound with less vinyl hiss? Like, what is the difference?
Like I said, it's generational loss, so it's the closest you can get to the master tape without actually listening to the master tape. It's removing the steps of generational loss, and the loss of inequality from doing that's just directly from the cut of the vinyl directly onto the cut from the master directly onto the vinyl. So it's a, and not to mention all the EQ processing that they do at these companies that they work with. It just, I can't describe it exactly. I'm not like technical with a lot of the stuff. I'm just sort of regurgitating what I'm hearing from what they're telling me, what people that I've listened to and watched do. But it's just a very high quality record, and it sounds amazing. Like I said, it. I mean, if you probably listen to it on a cheaper turntable, like probably something like we were talking about before, like a Bluetooth thing or like a Crosby, it's probably not going to be any different. But if you listen to it like
Yeah.
on a high quality system, you'll be like, okay, now I hear it, and it's like, oh my god, it's just amazing sounding. And not to mention the quality of the vinyl they press it on adds to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, that. So I'm still skeptical, not because I don't believe you, but because here's a perfect example. I just paid a stupid amount of money for an original Wu-Tang Clan 36 Chambers Enter the Wu-Tang, their first album. And
Dang,
and I mean I've heard those songs forever, and I listened to digital versions that were cleaned up, and the digital versions you could absolutely say are clearer, better. You know, you could use those words, but when you throw in that cassette, you play the first two songs, that's absolutely how the RZA wanted it to sound. There's no
the
doubt in my
RZA, the
brain.
Jizza,
Yep. I
ODB. I
mean,
can't say his name online.
it's
Raekwon the chef.
powerful. I mean, if you listen to the interviews with him too, the goal was to make it sound as real as possible. And I think he used the word grimy, and like that's what he wanted it to sound like. And it was, you know, I definitely prefer it. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to listen to that album. You know, maybe a song here and there, but I'm never going to listen to the album again unless it's the cassette on the player that I have,
Yeah.
because I think it's supposed to sound like that.
I
So,
mean, and if you think about it, that's pretty much how he probably captured a lot of those samples from all the old movies. He probably used, this crappy VHS he had, threw it in there, put the line out into the mix board, wherever he captured the recording on,
yep.
and probably recorded, if I had to guess, probably to a tape. So you have a tape onto a master tape. So the samples are gonna sound pretty bad and like, or not gonna sound the
So I
best.
don't
And
know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure captured same thing VHS into the input, but I think they were sampled onto 3.5-inch floppy. I could be wrong about that though,
really,
but yeah, on
that's
a
interesting.
mixing, uh, there were like those high end, it's like a keyboard with a floppy drive in it, and that's how I've seen a lot of music created from back then, was using it. I don't know that for a fact. That's just a guess, so I'd have to look that up. But
Yeah, I'm just thinking like back then what I would have done if I had to capture a sample from an old martial arts movie, and at least that's at least how I would have done it. It's like whatever, it's a VHS or maybe even I don't even think they released those on Laserdisc, so I don't think even that was an option for them back then, even though it probably was. I just don't I don't know.
yeah,
Like I said, I don't know what was pressed. I mean, I could probably see it because it was the '70s, so there's probably some Laserdisc versions of that out there, but if I had to
yeah.
take a
But
guess,
these
you
were a
probably just
bunch of poor
captured
kids from a bad neighborhood in Staten Island. They're not having a laser disc player. They had, they're using
VHS,
whatever
yeah,
they had to,
or like maybe some record from TV. So, like I said, but I guess the point is that a lot of those samples probably wouldn't have sounded any better on vinyl mastered to any one step process. It's not gonna make old VHS samples or whatever they captured on sound like audiophile recordings unless they
yeah,
literally redo all the sampling by all the digital standards of today. But even then, like it's the whole thing. It's a whole discussion we could have for hours about how the quality would have been and why it probably wouldn't have been. And that's probably why it sounds so good on a cassette, because that's, probably what he was using to listen back to it, record demos and stuff. And that's probably,
yeah.
yeah, it's good enough for me. Let's do it.
So, um, ripping vinyl. I
Yeah.
have my theories on this, but I don't have enough experience to say anything for sure. So everything I'm going to say is guesses. But most of the how to rip your vinyl videos and documentation I've seen seems like 100% bullshit. It seems like, how do you take a format that's designed for one thing and change it into another? So you basically end up with a compressed MP3 with some vinyl hiss on it, and completely defeating the purpose. But I do think, so I guess we should go back. For years I've heard that vinyl had a wider range of frequency sound capability than CDs, which is why some people preferred it over that.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that's definitely that's pretty much a truth. I mean that's like technically true that it did have a bit like, and that's even if you look at the tech docs of both CD and vinyl, that's actually true that it did have a wider dynamic range. A was it sound? I can't remember exactly the range of that. Definitely technically true.
So, but just to reiterate the point that we were making before, if you have an album that was recorded, mixed, and mastered digitally and designed to
Yeah,
be listened to on CDs, doesn't mean that if it's on a vinyl, it's going to sound better. In fact, it might even sound worse. But in the context of what it was designed for, then yes, I think you could have a wider range. So when you rip it, why I would guess that in order to really get the true sound, you would first need an amazing phono preamp. You would need to probably spend at least $1,000 to get a true reproduction of an analog sound, and then you would need to record at 24-bit 192K, in FLAC in order to truly capture the full range of sound. Have you experienced any of that? Have you tried it? Have you tested any of it?
I actually have. There's actually a record here I have. I'll need to find it, but it's a record. Oh, that's right there. I see it. So here. Let's move that over there. So basically, this is a record that I kept. It's called like the new J-pop. It's a channel on YouTube that streams like Japanese. Basically, they stream a bunch of a Japanese, like old Japanese records that are super obscure that the guy goes to Japan, like picks out a bin and gets them. This is one called it's called the Shaking Jigsaw Puzzle Band. It's called
Mm-hmm.
Soul Sudara. And this, if you find this online in any capacity that I didn't capture, I will I'll give you something. I'll send you anybody a record if they can, because I know they can't. So essentially, this is a record that I had to capture digitally, and I have it on YouTube. If you look up "Shaking Jigsaw Puzzle Band Soul Sudara," this
Mm-hmm.
will pop up, and I'll send Bob a link in case he wants to put in the description. So I
Absolutely.
captured this from my setup using, like I said, 192 24-bit into into an expensive phono preamp into my audio interface and capture it that way to get the best quality sound I can. And that's about the way I did it. And this is really necessary because I wanted to have people listen to and sample. And actually, fun fact. Sorry, it's quoting Pandemonium. He actually uses that in one of his videos, the soundtrack to that. So I already know that I was successful in capturing that and happy that I did. But I guess the point is that you do need equipment to get the best you can. You don't necessarily need $1,000 phono preamp because I only used like about a $500-$600 one. And
Yeah, I was exaggerating. I just
yeah,
meant don't buy that Bluetooth record player and
yeah,
stick it
don't
right in
yeah.
yeah.
The thing is that if the turntable wasn't meant to record it, that's probably the best way to capture a record onto a computer. So it's kind of a weird thing to think about because you think like, oh, but this turntable has built-in USB. No, what you want to do
Oh
is
no.
you want to is if the record is actually a hassle to capture, that means you got the right one. The right turntable and the right and the right interface. So you want is if you get as all analog as possible, you want to keep that whole setup, everything on the turntable, the phono preamp or the receiver, whatever you use, keep that all analog, and then use an audio interface or something to capture on your computer. Because even putting it into a line in on your sound card, there's going to be some issues because that's not meant for that purpose.
Yeah, it's funny. So if you really want to do this right, you need first, you cannot use Windows 10 or 11, or I guess 8. 8's terrible anyway. You have to use certain builds of Linux because the audio back end of certain builds is different. I forgot which one is the one people are going to, but I'm going to have a whole other video out on that at some point soon.
Don't
Or
tell anybody
Windows
that I
7.
captured that on Windows 10.
Well, you need because for whatever reason Windows 10 and 11 it destroys sound at a lower level. So your ears probably can't pick it up, but you
Yeah,
want to you want a clean start. So you want one of those two. Then you want an MD4A approved audio interface because if it's approved and you could test it yourself, That means that it doesn't add noise to the noise floor. It doesn't change the signal within a reasonable percentage. I use the Motu M4, which is still available and awesome. I also use the M Audio 192K, which has an even lower noise floor, but you have to edit the files afterwards. I'll get to that. So you need to make sure that your equipment and your operating system are there. You definitely need to have some kind of decent preamp. And a company that I actually really like, so I don't want to say their name, but I was talking to them about their preamps, and they're like, oh, yeah, if you get this model, it has USB out, so you could rip your collection. And I looked at the specs, it was like 16-bit, 44K. It was basically CD. And I'm like, this is a giant piece of shit. No, of course not.
Yeah,
So you need a
I
preamp
do
that
want to.
doesn't suck.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I do want to shout one that doesn't suck is the mobile fidelity. I think it's the phone. I forget what exactly it was. It's the basically it's the mobile fidelity. The you don't have it comes in either one with an audio amp out, like a headphone amp out, but the mobile fidelity one, I think it's like 300 or something. I would highly
Mm.
recommend that for anybody that wants a good medium because it's great quality. A lot of audiophiles love it. It's not exactly entry level, but it's one of the best you could probably get on a solid
I
state
would love it if you
basics.
could send me a link to that because I think a lot of people would really appreciate it. The one I'm using now for this current setup is a Project $180 one that is fine. It's not great. The reason I didn't spend more is because I'm going to be upgrading the head and cartridge next year, and I was told by a couple of people that I trust that that's when you really want to get the better preamp. So upgrade all of that at the same time. So I just got the basic ones, but I'll make sure
Yeah,
to leave a link to the one that you sent because I really think that that spending a little bit of money to start is definitely worth it for people. And if you're just starting out and you don't even know if this is worth it to you, I still would get a record player that's, when I say high end, not a piece of crap. Spend 3, 4, 500 bucks if this is something that matters to you. If you're the person that just likes to look at the artwork and listen to a song or wants the experience, like there's some Middle Eastern records that my grandparents used to listen to that I still listen to now and then, and they sound like shit on record, they sound like shit on CD, but it's the experience I want. And if that's what
exactly.
you're going for, fine, get the cheap stuff. But I would absolutely strongly recommend getting a bass player that's good enough so that if you do things like change the head and add a different preamp, then you're just talking about small incremental updates with the same
Gotcha.
bass
You mean in terms of like changing the cartridge, right?
cartridge, needle, head. Yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Okay.
And
Yeah. The whole. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, if people really want to get into it, and that's still pretty pricey to them, you can always go to a record store and they have used turntables like anything techniques. Basically, all you have to look for is does it have a counterweight? Does it have maybe an anti skate? Does it have a switchable head shell? If you can get those three, it's pretty much a pretty good starting point for a turntable. And you might not. You're probably gonna spend maybe like $100 $200 tops for a used one, and
mm,
like any record store worth their weight in salt could help you point in the same direction. Will have a selection of decent turntables, and if you want it basically, and if you want an idiot proof turntable, where it's like I want something that's good that I can buy and I don't have to think about it, and I just go on Amazon, hit add to cart, just get one of the Audio Technica LP 120s. Perfect. That's what all you need. Turntable
how
head.
much is that one?
I think it ranges from like 200 to 300. Let me see the price. The things that with inflation,
Oh yeah, you
it
never
like
know.
it changed the price and the stuff. So, yeah, cheapest one I'm seeing 300 for LTP 120 USB. Which yeah, it does have USB out, but it still sounds good. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's a good point. Just because it has USB out doesn't mean it's a cash grab piece
you
of
don't
crap. It
have to
just
use the USB
yeah,
out.
just don't use it.
Spoilers. Or the Orbit's U-turn. Let me see U-turn Orbit. Sorry, I don't mean looking
So
up on the spot and be that guy,
no,
but
I
like
appreciate it
off the
so
top of
we
my
don't
head,
forget.
yeah, I can't remember. I'd rather give yeah, but yeah, that actually that's a little bit more expensive. Oh no, you can get the base one for 329. So you don't like I said, if you don't want to spend that much for a new turntable, you can get something like that like the uh like the used ones at the store. You can get something on Amazon where it's just add to cart and forget about it for 300, and it does sound a lot, especially probably in this economy. But if like honestly, if you're serious about it and you want to listen to it, I would recommend that. And I guess you could probably maybe like stretch to an ATLP 60, which is like a cheaper turntable, but even then, it's like I would just get like a used turntable that price. But that's just
Yeah.
me. Like for the same
So
price,
you
you
make
get
a very good
yeah,
point, and it's something that I thought we probably should have addressed at the beginning, not 45 minutes in. But um, don't get super cheap stuff because the needle could actually damage your records. So don't get super cheap stuff. But
yeah,
if you're listening to this going, I would never want to spend that much money on players, then don't. And I mean that with love and respect. I'm not making fun of you. Like, if you just want to listen to music, just download the files from your favorite service, stream it wherever. You don't have to spend money to enjoy the music. What we're talking about is for people that have already decided that they want to get into vinyl and they want to
yeah.
appreciate the
Like vinyl is your
differences in
life. You're
sound.
buying records on vinyl. You just inject $1,000 records into your veins. You inject that directly into your vein. Like, well, I mean, probably not that, but like probably like a little
Yeah,
closer.
I
But yeah,
actually,
like
I
you're
don't even
getting
think that.
getting that stuff.
Yeah, I actually don't even think that you need to be that extreme in order to want to spend this money on it. I think you just have to have decided that enough of it is worth it to you. You know, it's like people like me who own an Atari Jaguar just to play Tempest 2000. There's a million different ways I could play Tempest, but that's important to me. It's the same thing, you know. I probably got 30 records now. I'm probably going to listen to 15 of them, you know, at least once a year for the rest of my life, and it's worth spending the money on that to have that experience for me. But you can just, you know, play it on Spotify if you don't want to spend the money.
Yeah, or if you want digital and you don't want to deal records, get like high end audio interfaces. Get high end like players, like or high end like DAC players, like and stuff. It definitely is an option. You might even save money getting one of those super high end like the FLAC players versus a turntable. So there's
Yeah,
and it kind of is an analog almost to no pun intended to an analogy to like with the Mister stuff, where it's like, yeah, you can get the original consoles, or you can get the Mister, and while it's not the original experience and the experience that we want that a lot of people like, you can get that high quality, and you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on cartridges or ever drives and stuff. You can get that package deal.
yeah, and I do actually think Mr. Analogy is great because there are a lot of people out there that do just enjoy a Mr. and don't really need anything else, but they still enjoy hearing about the other stuff, and you know they think it's interesting. Just like there's a lot of people that might really enjoy this conversation that will never buy a record, that will never invest in a vinyl player, but they think it's an interesting topic. So I always appreciate that.
Yeah, and definitely, and if I don't know Bob's time schedule, so I don't want to talk for him. But if anybody wants to reach out to me and talk about records, or say, "Yo, Patrick, I want to get into records. What do I need to do?" Just feel free to message me anytime, Discord or anything, and I definitely will talk to you about it because, like, I'm passionate about it. And I think that's what I love is the passion. Like, talk about the passion. Shout out REM. But yeah, I guess like my thing is that I love listening to passion. I hopefully people that don't like records might listen to be like, man, I'm really passionate about it. And they're like, maybe I should get into this. And like I said, it's you don't have to spend all this money in records. You could buy, like decent copies. Like I think one example that I love is I'm gonna search for it. Actually it's right there. I'm good. I'm good at record covers. I could see them from a mile away, but like Nirvana, like this record, this is probably one of the best sounding of it. It's a analog pressing Bernie Grunman. Oh man, am I gonna? I think I need to do that so you don't get demonetized.
That's fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
but anyways, yeah, like I said, Bernie Grunman cut, very high quality, all analog, Preston Palace. You probably guessing, man, this must cost a fortune. $25 now. You can go online, buy one of these Preston Palace. $25 for analog. You don't have to break the bank to get the best quality records. Sometimes you can spend that, and it's, especially with jazz, like with Blue Note, they're releasing analog records, 25 a pop, highest quality you can get. Great pressing, Bernie Grunman. I don't think Bernie Grunman does those, but high quality engineers that work on them. You don't have to break the bank to get the best quality records either. Like this isn't like an expensive hobby that you need to spend $100 on. You could spend $25 and get like high quality records. You don't have to, and
Depends on
that's what I
what you're
love
going
about it.
for. I wanted an original Holy Diver Dio because they're remixing the album now, and it's funny. The guy who remixed it told Wendy Dio, "No, absolutely not. I'm not touching that album." And she's like, "No, no, no. It's a lot of people are listening to it on their cell phones now. It doesn't sound the same. We need you to
They should have.
remix it
They
for
honestly,
you know."
honestly, I may be honest. They should have really got Robert Trujillo to re-record the bass on that, and the other, someone else to re-record the drums. Because I think, and I'm just joking.
That's funny as hell. No, but I mean,
Yeah,
in all seriousness, though, if you're listening on your cell phone, like the first time a friend of mine put their cell phone in like a rocks glass, and all of a sudden it's loud. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Now you have music everywhere you go, anytime you want to. So I love that, and I love that they took the time to remaster that for that exact reason. But the original sounds so much better, and I think I bought the record for $30. Whereas if I
exactly.
wanted an original from the '60s or '70s, Paranoid from Black Sabbath, I'm spending infinitely more money than that, which I love. I,
Yeah,
I actually got one, and it turned out to be cracked, so I got to go back on Discogs and figure
and
that out.
cut break some heads.
No, no, no. I bought it from a like a random shop or something like that. So buying from Discogs has been a great experience every time. Everybody's very honest so far. I get exactly what I expected. So
Yeah, and I also want to point out as well that sometimes the high quality records that are like audiophile aren't even the best. Like this Megadeth record I have, is it over there? I think it's right here. Sorry, I try to organize these so I can just easily pull these out. But this is right here. This Megadeth Countdown to Extinction. Like
oh
this is
yeah.
like an technically an audiophile grade, but I actually do not like the way this sounds because it uses the 2004 remasters, and it definitely
Um,
is not for me. Yeah, and that's a big bummer with that. That's why I actually just sold it recently as well. But like I said, sometimes the audiophile records are not the best sounding ones. Like even that, like a lot of the ones I have, it's a lot of collectibles. So like sometimes, even if you're spending the money, sometimes it's not going to be the best quality you can possibly get, or something that's reasonable. Which I like with the audiophile community is that they're very honest about that. Where it's like you don't have to pump the money. You don't need, you don't need like even if you have the third best sounding copy, it's still 85% of the best sounding copy, which I think for a lot of people is good enough, especially with the way people's hearings deteriorates over time. So like with
yeah,
that, never mind. That's probably the second best or third best sounding copy, but like it's still one of the best sounding copies you could possibly get for your money if you, and then you're not spending like $1,500 on an original pressing to get the best quality, and which is
yeah.
what I like about the hobby. Like, I mean, it's like you don't have to, and you can get the best sound quality for a cheap price.
I think I always try in every video I do and every post, I always try to incorporate saving money or why you would want to
Yeah,
spend the money into it. And if like I would never tell somebody, oh, if you want to listen to the original Dio album the best way, go spend $1,500. Like that's stupid. And I think people would lose a lot of respect for me if I tried to come across that way. But if you
yeah,
think about it on the flip side, you have two channel audio that you really love that you want to hear music on. So the amp that I've been using for two channels, the NAD, I'll leave a link. I'm doing a whole video on that in a couple of weeks, but
looking forward to it.
it's amazing for two channel audio, for analog two channel audio.
Hmm.
And I found two sets of speakers, some ELACs and the Ascend Acoustics that I already talked about, that are both for the money the best I've ever heard. That for the money is really what I try to impress upon people when I talk about audio stuff. Anybody could have a stereo that sounds better if you spend a shitload of money, but not, if you find the right combination of components, you could save a ton. So, you
Exactly.
could pick up one of those NAD amps for 500, it's $400 for a set of speakers. We're at 900 now. And then you put in a good record player, you're looking at almost $1,500 after you need all the accessories that you need. If you're just looking to play one or two records, that's very dumb. But if you also say, hey, I'm going to pick up a used Nakamichi cassette player for $100 and, make sure to refurbish it. And, oh, like I also have these video game consoles from the 80s and 90s that I love the music on. Suddenly, it's not $1,500 to listen to two records. Suddenly, it's $2,000 to have an holy shit, amazing, I can't believe I own a stereo like this quality. And that's why I always say for the money. If you put that into context and you say, oh, well, I spent this much on it, what you're getting for all of the other stuff is really what the total experience of everything that you have that's analog is going to sound amazing.
Exactly. And it's all of what you use it for. Like, for example, if you buy like a record, you like listen, like you were saying, it's like, but if you buy something that you're just gonna keep using over and over again, like these headphones or something, like if you put the money into it and you're gonna use it every single day of your life, like an iPhone or a car, or like, cell phone, I don't know. I'm not gonna debate on which side's better or not, but an expensive phone, there we go. An expensive phone or a PVM or, something of that nature. If you're gonna use it every day and it's in your life, it's worth the money. Because like, I mean, I just can't, like, I used to buy like the crappy, like the Sony, like little Sony headphones you buy like at Walmart
Me
for
too.
$10, and like they were good, but they broke, and I had to keep getting them over and over again. But these like I have a pair of IEMs, as a Shure SE215s I use. I
Hmm.
got those in 2014, and I use those probably every day of my life, pretty much on a consistent basis. Either it's going to the gym, traveling, listening to music. High quality, and I have it every day. It was $100. Even these headphones, like they were pricey. I'm trying not to flex. It's really hard, but like I just trying to get the idea across that sometimes it's worth the investment, sometimes it's not. So like some of the video games I kind of regret getting because I don't play them every day, and like I could use the money better, and that's why I sell even records. I sell them sometimes because like if I'm not listening to them, why do I have them? I guess so. I guess I never really vibe with that too much. But like you were saying, if you're using it every day, and it makes more sense to, oh, this $300 pair of headphones. But if you look at it, 300 pair of headphones, but I'm going to use it every single day of my life, and it's going to increase my enjoyability of what I do to a day to day basis. I think that's easily worth the investment, in my opinion. But like I said, sometimes you don't even need to spend that much money to get the best out of your life or headphones. Like even hell, even an $80 or $60 investment in something that like audio wise is going to change your love and respect to music. Where it's like, because like going from like, it's kind of like ice analogy is going from composite to S video. Yeah, it's not RGB, but the step up is so huge
Hmm.
in comparison that it's like, wow, this actually makes the experience even better than I was enjoying it before.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the money thing, right? If you buy the stuff that we were just talking about, and you buy a rolling rack, and you buy a calibrated BVM, and you're $4,000 into this, right? And you play a couple of games on it, and you listen to one record, and that's it. I mean, you definitely should have just downloaded that song on your favorite music store of choice and played it on an emulator. But these are things that they don't age out, right? Like you buy a brand new phone, 3, 4 years from now, it's slow and clunky. You buy a really nice amp, really nice speakers, and a bunch of records that you take good care of. That same $4,000, holy crap, why would anybody be so dumb to spend that experience? You use that for 10 years. Now you're talking about $1 a day. If you use that thing a couple of times a week, was that worth $1 a day to you? Yeah, of course. Not
Absolutely.
even blinking an eye. So it's really just what matters to you, and how you apply that to your life. And I gotta say, like, I always wanted a good stereo, always. And with being the poor kid, cousin Scott and I would like wire stuff together and plug this into this, and you have to like flip on 4 switches to get it. And we made it work. But this is the first time in my life I actually sit down and listen to music and just go, I gotta pinch myself sometimes. Like I feel like the richest man in the world because I have a stereo that sounds this good. So,
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I love getting old tech like that, where it's like we could never afford it as kids, but nowadays we're feeling like the big businessman with the Neo Geos rolling down the street and his 6'4". No, uh, but I guess yeah, it's just amazing that we can, we're big boys now. We're men, men and women. We can afford the stuff nowadays. Like we can get it, and I really, and that's why I love old tech, like getting the high old high end stuff, because it makes me feel like a millionaire. It's like, wow, I remember I saw this, as like, god damn, I really want this, but I can never afford that. And now it's like, god damn, even though it's like, of course, marginally less expensive, it's cool to own and have something. Was
yeah.
like, damn, I can't believe this is in my house.
It's so funny, that wave of emotion. Like I see how much money I make on YouTube, and I'm like, I'm fucking poor. I gotta sell some more shit in order to get the new shit. And then I sit down and I listen to the stereo, and I'm like, I think I'm the richest man in the world. I could listen to Michael Jackson, pre-diddle Michael Jackson, and it sounds so good. And it's kind of funny to see if you just pick the right equipment, you save your money, you get what's important to you. Yeah, you don't need to spend $1 million. And that's the one, the only thing, you're talking about flexing before. The only thing I enjoy flexing and enjoy bragging about is how little I spend to sound like this versus people that spend 10, 20, 30 grand on a nice stereo that sounds better, but not 20 grand better. It's
Yeah.
that's my flex moment. It's figuring out
And the
the
best
exact
thing
combination.
is that the thing I like about it is like, and you can too. You can too,
Yeah,
Vera. You don't have to blow out all this money for that. You can be, the budget master of having the best stuff. You don't have to buy, EverDrives with RGB mod consoles or HDMI out. You can get a Mister and enjoy your life and not have to spend all that money and have just the same experience, maybe if
yeah.
not better in some aspects. And that's what I like about that. And that's what I try to iterate in my stuff as well, is that you don't have to, spend all this money. You literally every present I have, you could probably find an equivalent and equipment that I have and sound just as good, if not better, in some aspects, which is what I love
Or
about
you
the
could
hobby.
piece it one at a time. Like
Exactly,
if you
that
really
too.
wanted to, you go out and get that NAD amp that I love so much that has a shockingly good phono preamp in it for something that's built in. Definitely impressive for the money, and then just go to a Goodwill and pick up two bookshelf speakers that aren't blown, and start there. And then as the
Exactly.
years go on, and then hey, I dropped $500 on a 2-channel amp. I don't really use it anymore. Let me sell it. Fine. Or hey, I'm really using this all the time. It's for video games. It's for cassettes, for everything else. Then pick up your set of speakers. Then you get the used turntable that you got for 100, $200 somewhere. That's good. It's not going to ruin your records. Make sure to you get at least a decent. When I say decent, like not beat up and old. Spend $20 on a head with a good needle. You'd probably want to spend a lot more, but just saying, not junk. And then you start listening and you go, hey, this is awesome. This is great. But I was just over at Patrick's house and his sounds so much better. So now I'm going to upgrade the player. And now I'm going to, you don't have to just walk out and drop $2,000 for this. You could dip your toe in the water and do one step at a time. And that 2-channel amp is going to last a long time. You buy that now, that's definitely going to still be kicking 10 years from now.
Exactly, and there's definitely you don't have to get the top end even cartridges. Honestly, I've been preaching the Audio Technica cartridges, the AT series, or sorry, the
Mm-hmm.
ATVM series. There's so
Yeah.
many good options for that. You can go from 39 $40 to almost 100 a few $100, and it'll sound pretty I mean, there's probably jumps to there's a lot of good middle grounds and stuff. So you can just, and like you said, increment over time if you want, or get maybe keep this and maybe I want to upgrade to the next level and just sell the other one off and put that money towards it, so you don't have to.
I mean, or here's another crazy idea. If you're not really sure, just buy some of the vinyl that you think you might like now and just keep it. Keep it on, display it somewhere on your shelf, put it on your
Yeah,
wall, bring it to a friend's house with a player and listen. You don't, you could love the physical media aspect. You could love the artwork aspect. You could take out the sleeve and read the lyrics as you're listening to the Spotify stream for free. Like, you don't,
you can
if
smell
you
it.
want to start, yeah,
I
if
know
you
it's
want to
weird, but
start getting into it,
I don't know, I'm very tactile in the way, there's a joke on my podcast, I love smelling things. So I love smelling old things, when you open up a record that's a bit old, that it's taken care of but it's old, you can smell the age on it. It's like a
mold.
vintage
You can smell the
like
mold, cigarettes, the disease.
cigarette. Honestly, some of that stuff actually is
Somebody
fun.
scratched their ass and then touched that record 30 years ago, and now you're
Exactly, the
sniffing
butt
ass.
smells the best. But yeah, I have where the heck did I put that? But yeah, one record I picked up recently, it was you know the band Sonic Youth, right?
Sonic Youth, yeah.
I picked up oh man, I don't know where I put the record in. It's in one of these piles over here. I
For
like I
for
said,
anybody listening audio only, Pat's got three deep piles of records
I have
that he
two more
surrounded
off
himself with,
screen.
so he could have props for this. And I guarantee you, that's not all the records he has.
Nope. Yeah, but the Sonic Youth Daydream Nation, it's got that vintage smell. I found this actually about the other day, a couple days ago, but it was in a record store, really great quality. I love Sonic Youth Daydream Nation's probably one of my favorite records of all time. Amazing avant-garde record. I love Sonic Youth, but yeah, great record. But I guess the point is that it had that '80s smell. You can smell the vintage on it, which I love. And I know some people don't like that stuff. It's oh, I want it smelling pristine and new, or looking pristine. But I love that the look of it's a bit old. It's a bit faded a bit in some aspects. It feels old. It has the sleeves with the it's all brown and stuff. You can't see it on my camera if for audio
Yeah.
viewers, but it's brown. Like the thing go from a white to a brown, and it's a weird thing to have an opinion on. But I love that aspect of it. So even if you don't, want to listen to it, or you can't listen to it, or you just want to save up, I would highly recommend even just getting the records because even I know I know people don't like the word investment, but sometimes records can be investments. So like I like that Evangelion one back there. I bought that for $50. The one it's like it's the one next to the Adam Hart mother, but I bought it for $50, and right now that's probably my most expensive record I own now. That's it. I think the last one sold for about $700.
Wow.
So yeah, records are crazy in that regards, and I know a lot of people don't like that investment word, especially with video games and the market the way it is. But like, if worst case, the record doesn't. It's usually most of the time the records stay the same price relatively. So if you don't like them or you're not vibing with them, you could probably sell them and make pretty much what you put into it back per se. And at least that's
Just take good care of it.
yeah. Don't throw it against the wall. Don't scratch them a with a blade or something. Don't like just go. But yeah, keep in good condition, keep it in the sleeve, and yeah. Also, I guess also I forgot to show off my. This is my methodology for keeping my record safe. I get like the outer sleeves, and I have these MoFi inner sleeves. Like I would recommend highly you get these MoFi
Yeah.
inner sleeves, and I store them outside of the record for record wear protection. So highly recommend that. I
So,
think
I want to just go back over that because that's the one thing I forgot to talk about before. If you do
yeah.
take your time to clean your records, whether you have a fancy
Mm-hmm.
cleaner or whether you just follow whatever safe methods are online, make sure that make sure you follow the right people. We all know, you all know how the YouTubers can sometimes get it wrong, but if you've cleaned it, and it's not expensive to get those sleeves at all. We're not talking hundreds of dollars. It's kind of like with comics and Mylar, but cheaper, where once you've cleaned that record, put it in its new inner sleeve, because even those, like the old paper, the old sleeve that you just
Mm-hmm.
showed, those could deteriorate over time,
and
and that's
they
part of
scruff
the
up the
reason.
record, stick to it,
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Also, the outer sleeve is neat just because it protects your record, but here's the only question I have.
mm-hmm.
When you have those done, spending a couple of bucks on the sleeves are definitely worth it. Why do you put it on the outside of the record? I've been putting mine on the inside, and I've been afraid that it's stretching the cardboard, but it doesn't seem to be.
So the thing is that over time there's a thing called ring wear, and you'll see it on records. Like you'll see like there's a bunch of white speckles on the outside of it, and it's in a circular shape. That's from the
On
record
the cardboard of the record itself.
cover of the record's
I
outer
mean, sorry,
sleeve,
on the cardboard of the sleeve
the inner,
itself. My
the
bad.
sleeve, the the album art of itself, the album, the cover for that. There's out
Okay.
and over time, if you keep it in there, sometimes it will rub against it, or
Mhm.
it'll rub against it. And also another point is taking the record out and in. There's always a chance, because it's glued together by like just a small thin glue and a little outer sleeve. And if you take them in constantly, eventually maybe something might happen. It might rub against it, or you might slip and like maybe cut like, and especially in shipping, and the record isn't tight in there.
Oh,
I'm not
shipping. The shipping.
especially
There is no debate in shipping. Do it the way
yeah.
you do it for shipping.
Because yeah, if it's going, if it's basically it's loose in there. So if it goes, it might just go right through the record, and you'll have like a
Yeah.
record. It looks like a white tear in there. That's where the record popped through it, either with
Yeah, so
shipping or
you'll ruin
maybe
the cover. Yeah, so shipping
yeah,
100%. I agree with you. There's no doubt in my mind. But
yeah,
for me, I love when I pick up the record. Like I just like seeing both sides. It's neat. So I've been storing
yeah,
them in, but I don't. I mean, I'm not shipping mine, so I don't know. Maybe I'll eventually. You know what? If anybody's still listening to this, your thoughts in the comments. If you're a record collector, uh, what do you do it Pat's way, not for shipping, just for storage,
yeah,
or do you do it my way, where you put it back in so you kind of have a more original, fun experience when you take the record out?
yeah.
I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on it, and if there is a known right or wrong way. But for shipping, there is no debate. You don't leave it in the cover. You put it in a sleeve, in the double sleeve, just like Pat's been showing. Like that's not even a
Exactly.
debate, because a lot of time, even with brand new records, if it's dropped hard in shipping, it'll go right through that cover. So
Yeah, and I guess I guess the things that I agree with Bob's experience, but I'll only say one thing to be a bit competitive is that I will no way in hell have that experience for a $800 record where if I mess up once and I cut the sleeve, the value is cut in half. And I know we're not talking about, but like with a
Good
rare
point.
record, it's like it's not even that. It's like not even like a oh my the resale value. It's like oh shit, I want a pristine record, so now I got to buy another $800 record. It's like oh fuck, ghoul, and it's like it's just a whole thing. So, but that's just me. That's because I'm crazy. But yeah,
No,
for
that's
like
an
a
excellent point.
if a $10-$20 record, fine, do it. It doesn't matter if something happens, whatever. Just get a new one. It's fine. But like $800 record, it's like that's in the ballpark. It's like yeah, that's a whole new thing, and it's like you don't really want to risk unless you don't care, which is fine. If you spent like $20 on it, whatever. It's your record, you know.
But I mean, so I agree with you 100%. But what is, and I'm honestly asking, I'm not, I'm not being facetious, but what
Yeah.
is really the chance of you have a shelf somewhere in your, in your family room, in your office, and you take your record out and you carefully pull it out of the sleeve and you put it on your player and you carefully put it back? What are really the chances of that dropping and going through the cover? Is it higher because it's a lot of the stuff's old and getting brittle, or I mean, is that a real concern? Is that something that happens to people?
Well, the thing is that so I guess I'll full disclose. I actually have cerebral palsy, and sometimes like I like slip, and sometimes I miss stuff, or I'll miss I'll my vision's kind of mess. I'll mess something up. So there's times where I've put records back and I've missed it completely, and it goes on the glue outside where it's like because there's the way that a record's made is that it's a giant one thing and it's put together and it's glued at the ends of the seams.
Hmm.
So if I'm putting back a record, sometimes I miss it, and then I would put the record in between where that glue is, and it would just split down the middle. And that's what you see on a couple of records where it's like the seam split, like the seam split, like that glue is pulled together. And you put a record back, and it'll just fall back out. And that's. I mean, it's sort of like I guess it's like getting to a car accident. It probably will never happen, but to me, I would rather not risk it and just keep it on the inner sleeve. That plus, it's easy to pull this out. It's like if I want to pull it out, it's like bam, right there. I don't have to open this up, put it back. Have to fumble with it, put it back in. It's like bam, right there. It's like bam. Want to listen to that? Bam, I'm done. Put that back. I want to listen to
All
something
excellent
modern.
points.
There you go. Bam, pull that out right there. It's a
Maybe
yeah.
you've convinced me. Then maybe you've convinced me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big. I don't like taking chances with stuff. So to me, it's what I like to do. And I honestly, I like the look. A record store did it, and I love the way that it looked. And I was like, you know what, I'll do it. So that's honestly the really only reason I did it, is because I love the way that looked and the process and how easy it was. And he convinced me that way too. He's like, yeah, you have to worry about that, worry about this, and you can see arguments online. And honestly, you're right. It probably will never happen. But to me, I don't want to risk it.
I always try to find a happy balance. Like I talked on a Q&A a couple weeks ago about how I got an old truck and I started detailing it and I went, well, am I really going to spend a whole weekend trying to get this thing looking perfect when there's no way you can anyway? There's paint missing in certain parts, but
Mhm.
like I want to be able to throw a load of dirt in this thing. I want to be able to I like the fact that if I come out of a parking lot and somebody dings me, I won't even know. So like there's got to be a happy medium between overprotective and still using it. And the opposite of that is the D32. I never ever turn that thing on. Only when I'm doing experiments or something like that. And it's almost a shame because it's one of the best CRTs ever made, but I'm so afraid. What if something happens? What if lightning strikes the moment I'm want it, like because I'll never get another one if something ever happened to that.
Exactly.
So I always try to find a happy balance between them, and I feel like if I'm actually going to sit and listen to music, not just like throw it on in the background while I'm
Mhm.
working. I use my studio monitors for that because, I want it to be an experience. And part of that, I guess, for me is sometimes looking at the cover. Like, I'm sure you know Jefferson Airplane, right?
Unfortunately, yes. Rebuilt Center Rock and Roll is probably the greatest tragedy of rock and roll ever to exist. Oh, that's
Yeah,
Starship.
I
So I
like
guess
the
technically it's a
song.
different band.
Yeah. Well, there's one song they did that just, I don't know why. It was made a long time before I was born, but it always
Mhm.
reminds me of something. So I got the record, I listened to the song, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I listened to the next song and I'm like, wow, why isn't this one a famous song? Like this, the chorus is so catchy, and then it just goes off into some weird direction, and then the next song comes on that's even weirder, and I flip the record over, and then it gets even weirder, and I grabbed the cover, and I was like, what the hell? And I'm looking at the front of it, and it's like fake news articles, and I opened up the fold on the inside, and it's two pieces of toast, one with jam, one with peanut butter, and I stared at it, and I'm like, oh, they were really high when they made this.
I
Like
guess you could say
really,
that
really high.
you haven't guarded a clue.
Yeah, that's funny,
But
but
yeah, there's a
it's a
lot of
stupid
records like
story, but it
that.
was part of the experience. Like it was part of that. Like, oh, I get it now. I can't listen to this sober. That's
Yeah, I think a record that I like tricking people with is Lou Reed's. I don't know if you know Lou Reed, right? Guy that did Velvet
yeah,
Revolver.
not the
He
biggest fan.
he has a record called
Sorry.
Heavy Machine Music, and I
Hmm.
tell people it's probably the greatest record I've ever listened to, and I literally recommend that all the time. But the record literally is Lou Reed taking a guitar, putting it next to an amp, turning the amp on, and just having the amp reverberate against the guitar strings, and just has a giant feedback loop. And that literally is it's a double side 2 LP record. It literally is that for about like 45 minutes straight. And I love doing that because people listening is like, wait, it'll get to the good part. And like it's like it never does because all it is just what it's like him. I
Yeah,
think he hits one string and just reverberate. I love that album. It's such avant garde weirdness, but I just love
that's why I
tricking
don't like
people with
Lou
that.
Reed.
Yeah, Lou Reed's amazing. I love him, even though he's kind of a interesting guy. But yeah, I guess the point is that I love, and you can never get stuff like that on maybe like tricking people on Spotify because it's kind of funny putting the needle down. You're like sitting there patiently waiting for it, and it's like an experience to trick people, which I think is funny.
I'd be so mad if you did that to me.
I'll bring it next time. We'll have an experience of it. I don't know. I got an appreciation for avant garde. Oh my god, I love just weird crap like that. It's so fun. But yeah, honestly, yeah, like what we were saying about that, like even stuff with ELO, I feel the same way. Where it's like, man, why is this song not popular? Oh yeah, it gets really weird. That's probably why it's not. But damn, I love
Well,
yeah.
I think this is the perfect time to call it. I think we covered all
Hmm.
ground. I think this was a really good primer for people. I'm going to be doing a video on 2 channel audio soon because, hey, guess what? Also is a perfect fit for 2 channel audio. Old video games. So
Hell
that'll
yeah.
be out at some point, probably by the end of the summer. I'm going to follow up with the surround sound one just so people don't hate me so much thinking that I'm telling them not to buy a surround sound. But I think one of the things that would be neat is if in the description of this video we put both of our recommended setups. And I want to say that with a caveat of, and I will put this in the notes, that these are our thoughts today as we recorded this.
Wait,
We're
recommend
nerds and we're
setups or our
music
setups?
enthusiasts. So, yeah, we're going to be changing them, evolving them.
Gotcha.
But today, right now, what do we both think? And, I'll put, Patrick's setup, my setup, and that way you could kind of see for yourself where we're at. But read that knowing the suggestions we made before of how you could start with almost go to Goodwill and get a 2 channel amp and 2 speakers for $15. Start from there if you wanted. But if you want to start upgrading, this is kind of where we're at today.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to need like half the video description for that because I have like 25 different configurations of setups for that. So
I mean, so
really
do I,
funny.
but like if you said I wanted to get into 2 channel analog audio right now, definitely the NAD amp, either the shielded or unshielded speakers, depending on if you're putting it next to a CRT.
Okay, so there's no price
You
range
know,
on this. This isn't the budget thing. You can just be like, this is what if money was no object. This well, I guess money was no
no, no,
object,
no,
but
no,
at a
not if
reasonable
money
amount.
is no object.
Okay,
Within reason, because if
within reason. Okay, yeah,
if you're on a budget, go to Goodwill. If you're not on a budget, but you're not rich, that's the kind of
gotcha.
thing.
I'll give you my exact setup because that's exactly what it is. Mine's not. Mine's on a budget. I mean, it's definitely probably. I think my setup in total is probably under 1,000, maybe 1,200 if I could gander a guess. But like, I'll give that recommendation. Oh, never mind. Our turntable's like $1,000. Sorry, I forgot I don't have a Techniques anymore. But I'll have the Techniques anyways. I'll put that in there. You don't have to use my.
It's so funny because if audiophiles are listening to this, they're like 1,200. That's what I spent just on speaker cable, and
Yeah,
if people
it's
who
like
listen to
those
their
are
cell
amateur
phone,
numbers. We need to boost those up.
yeah,
Where's the $10,000 speakers? Where's the the turntable looks like it'd shoot you 25 years into the future. Like,
Right,
where is that?
exactly.
Where is that,
And then you get
Patrick?
the flip side. The people that put their cell phones on the table and play music that way are like, you two are
Yeah,
stupid. I listen to music for free. So
but
you
yeah,
go, you go
the
both sides.
yeah, but one note I have to add on the turntable is that if you want a turntable that you can set forget and you can have forever and you don't need to upgrade ever, Technics 1200 Mark II. You will not go wrong with that turntable. There's no way you possibly can mess up. You want a turntable that you can have a forever turntable, Technics 1200 Mark II, or even some of the newer ones. There you go. Perfect. None. Anyone that comes like, great. Like for somebody like that doesn't really care about $20,000 turntables or even like 1,000. Perfect. That's my
Cool.
opinion though. But I'll put that in the video too. We'll do that.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to do this. Hopefully, we got people hyped up and also maybe a little bit grounded about vinyl. You don't need it, but if you want it, hopefully, we pointed everybody in the right direction. And I don't know, this was fun. We should do another one where we just talk about favorite albums, how they were made, and debate which mix is better. I think
I'd
we'd
be
get zero
down.
views in that one, but I'd still love to do it.
I'd be down. I've any time of the week, Bob. You want to bring me on about any discussion of music? I will be on. Whether it be why Megadeth has the worst remix I've ever heard in my life, or like why Metallica is. I don't know where I was going with that. Something with Metallica. We'll figure something out. Why Bob Rock is a genius because of Saint Anger. There we go.
Well, couldn't think of a more cliffhanger for the next one. So thanks very much, and thanks to all of you for watching.